In the year 1982, the decision of Plessy versus Ferguson set the precedent for the constitutionality of segregation in public facilities, otherwise known as the famous phrase separate but equal. This included public education throughout the United States, especially in the South. The difference between the white schools and black schools was not simply the skin color of the students and teachers which attended them. White schools were noticeably cleaner, newer, and had better equipment and school supplies altogether. Black schools, on the other hand, tend to be older buildings and lacked much equipment and school supplies. This is why most black children were often lacking the necessary education to advance themselves. The quality of education they were receiving compared little to the quality of education white children were receiving. On May 14, 1954, the United States saw change in the case Brown versus Board of Education. This case dealt with the constitutionality of segregation, specifically in education. In the end, segregation in public facilities, including education, was deemed unconstitutional. Nevertheless, despite the court ruling, many whites were unwilling to desegregate, especially white individuals in the South. Both white parents and students, and even teachers, protested the idea of desegregation, for they believed that it would taint their facilities and overall white community. In the year 1957, 9 African American children were admitted into Central High School, a typical all-white school, after the ruling of Brown versus Board of Education. Their admission provoked great anger in the white community. Many of them threatened the children's lives and their families. After much hardships, the 9 students were eventually able to attend the school, but only after President Eisenhower sent troops to make sure that the desegregation of the school would be carried out thoroughly. After the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, there was also an increase in bombings and violence in the South by white citizens. This forced the government to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1957, which would protect the rights of African Americans to vote. The act was hoped to be the start of legislature that would aid blacks in the fight for equality. However, this was not the case, as many still refused to desegregate. Segregation and a significant amount of discrimination was still present. In South Carolina, for example, 4 students were arrested in the year 1960 when they sat in seats reserved for white students only. Their efforts helped serve as a start of several other similar efforts and sit-ins in other states and cities. Today, schools are desegregated and many of them consist of a diverse group of students. It has not simply become black and white, but rather we see blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, and a variety of other races and cultures blending. However, does the issue of segregation still exist in the depths of the hundreds of school systems in the country? According to a news article published November of 2013, 74% of black students and 80% of Latino students went to schools that were more than half minority. More than 40% of black and Latino students attended schools that were 90% to 100% minority in the 2009-2010 school year. Additionally, according to Richard Rothstein, a sizable amount of black children still live in poor and both racially and economically isolated neighborhoods. 39% of black children are from families with incomes below the poverty line, compared with 12% of white children. 28% of black children live in high poverty neighborhoods, compared with 4% of white children. Therefore, segregation in education still haunts us today.
Oh, yes it will. I go to the movie and I go downtown. Somebody